We'd like to welcome everyone to the FP Network, where we are loving God, loving people, and treasuring Jesus together.
The book of 2 Chronicles, chapters 21 through 36. The Good News Translation. Chapter 21. Jehoshaphat died and was buried in the royal tombs in David's city, and his son Jehoram succeeded him as king. Jehoram, son of King Jehoshaphat of Judah, had 6 brothers: Azariah, Jehiel, Zechariah, Azariahu, Michael, and Shephatiah. Their father gave them large amounts of gold, silver, and other valuable possessions, and placed each one in charge of one of the fortified cities of Judah. But because Jehoram was the oldest, Jehoshaphat made him his successor. When Jehoram was in firm control of the kingdom, he had all his brothers killed, and also some Israelite officials. Jehoram became king at the age of 32, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 8 years. He followed the wicked example of King Ahab and the other kings of Israel, because he had married one of Ahab's daughters. He sinned against the Lord, but the Lord was not willing to destroy the dynasty of David, because he had made a covenant with David and promised that his descendants would always continue to rule. During Jehoram's reign, Edom revolted against Judah and became an independent kingdom. So Jehoram and his officers set out with chariots and invaded Edom. There the Edomite army surrounded them, but during the night they managed to break out and escape. Edom has been independent of Judah ever since. During this same period, the city of Libnah also revolted, because Jehoram had abandoned the Lord, the God of his ancestors. He even built pagan places of worship in the Judean highlands and led the people of Judah and Jerusalem to sin against the Lord. The prophet Elijah sent Jehoram a letter which read as follows: "The Lord, the God of your ancestor David, condemns you, because you did not follow the example of your father, King Jehoshaphat, or that of your grandfather, King Asa. Instead, you have followed the example of the kings of Israel and have led the people of Judah and Jerusalem into being unfaithful to God, just as Ahab and his successors led Israel into unfaithfulness. You even murdered your brothers who were better men than you are. As a result, the Lord will severely punish your people, your children, and your wives, and will destroy your possessions. You yourself will suffer a painful intestinal disease that will grow worse day by day." Some Philistines and Arabs lived near where some Ethiopians had settled along the coast. The Lord caused them to go to war against Jehoram. They invaded Judah, looted the royal palace, and carried off as prisoners all the king's wives and sons except Ahaziah, his youngest son. Then after all this, the Lord brought on the king a painful disease of the intestines. For almost 2 years it grew steadily worse until finally the king died in agony. His subjects did not light a bonfire in mourning for him as had been done for his ancestors. Jehoram had become king at the age of 32 and had ruled in Jerusalem for 8 years. Nobody was sorry when he died. They buried him in David's city, but not in the royal tombs. Chapter 22. Some Arabs had led a raid and killed all of King Jehoram's sons except Ahaziah the youngest. So now the people of Jerusalem made Ahaziah king as his father's successor. Ahaziah became king at the age of 22, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 1 year. Ahaziah also followed the example of King Ahab's family, since his mother, Athaliah, the daughter of King Ahab and granddaughter of King Omri of Israel, gave him advice that led him into evil. He sinned against the Lord because after his father's death, other members of King Ahab's family became his advisors, and they led to his downfall. Following their advice, he joined King Joram of Israel in a war against King Hazael of Assyria. The armies clashed at Ramoth in Gilead, and Joram was wounded in battle. He returned to the city of Jezreel to recover from his wounds, and Ahaziah went there to visit him. God used this visit to Joram to bring about Ahaziah's downfall. While Ahaziah was there, he and Joram were confronted by a man named Jehu, son of Nimshi, whom the Lord had chosen to destroy the dynasty of Ahab. As Jehu was carrying out God's sentence on the dynasty, he came across a group made up of Judean leaders and of Ahaziah's nephews that had accompanied Ahaziah on his visit. Jehu killed them all. A search was made for Ahaziah, and he was found hiding in Samaria. They took him to Jehu and put him to death. But they did bury his body out of respect for his grandfather, King Jehoshaphat, who had done all he could to serve the Lord. No member of Ahaziah's family was left who could rule the kingdom. As soon as King Ahaziah's mother, Athaliah, learned of her son's murder, she gave orders for all the members of the royal family of Judah to be killed. Ahaziah had a half-sister, Jehosheba, who was married to a priest named Jehoiada. She secretly rescued one of Ahaziah's sons, Joash, took him away from the other princes who were about to be murdered, and hid him and a nurse in a bedroom at the temple. By keeping him hidden, she saved him from death at the hands of Athaliah. For 6 years he remained there in hiding, while Athaliah ruled as queen. Chapter 23. After waiting 6 years, Jehoiada, the priest, decided that it was time to take action. He made a pact with 5 army officers, Azariah, son of Jeroham, Ishmael, son of Jehohanan, Azariah, son of Obed, Maaseiah, son of Adaiah, and Elishaphat, son of Zichri. They traveled to all the cities of Judah and brought back with them to Jerusalem the Levites and all the heads of the clans. They all gathered in the temple, and there they made a covenant with Joash, the king's son. Jehoiada said to them, "Here is the son of the late king. He is now to be king, as the Lord promised that King David's descendants would be. This is what we will do. When the priests and Levites come on duty on the Sabbath, 1/3 of them will guard the temple gates, another third will guard the royal palace, and the rest will be stationed at the foundation gate. All the people will assemble in the temple courtyard. No one is to enter the temple buildings except the priests and the Levites who are on duty. They may enter because they are consecrated. But the rest of the people must obey the Lord's instructions and stay outside. The Levites are to stand guard around the king with their swords drawn, and they are to stay with the king wherever he goes. Anyone who tries to enter the temple is to be killed." The Levites and the people of Judah carried out Jehoiada's instructions. The men were not dismissed when they went off duty on the Sabbath, so the commanders had available both those coming on duty and those going off. Jehoiada gave the officers the spears and shields that had belonged to King David and had been kept in the temple. He stationed the men with drawn swords all around the front of the temple to protect the king. Then Jehoiada led Joash out, placed the crown on his head, and gave him a copy of the laws governing kingship. And so he was made king. Jehoiada the priest and his sons anointed Joash, and everyone shouted, "Long live the king!" Athaliah heard the people cheering for the king, so she hurried to the temple where the crowd had gathered. There she saw the new king at the temple entrance, standing by the column reserved for kings and surrounded by the army officers and the trumpeters. All the people were shouting joyfully and blowing trumpets, and the temple musicians with their instruments were leading the celebration. She tore her clothes in distress and shouted, "Treason! Treason!" Jehoiada did not want Athaliah killed in the temple area, so he called out the army officers and said, "Take her out between the rows of guards and kill anyone who tries to rescue her." They seized her, took her out to the palace, and there at the horse gate they killed her. The priest Jehoiada had King Joash and the people join him in making a covenant that they would be the Lord's people. Then they all went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and idols there and killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Jehoiada put the priests and Levites in charge of the work of the temple. They were to carry out the duties assigned to them by King David and to burn the sacrifices offered to the Lord in accordance with the law of Moses. They were also in charge of the music and the celebrations. Jehoiada also put guards on duty at the temple gates to keep out anyone who was ritually unclean. The army officers, the leading citizens, the officials, and all the rest of the people joined Jehoiada in a procession that brought the king from the temple to the palace. They entered by the main gate, and the king took his place on the throne. All the people were filled with happiness, and the city was quiet now that Athaliah had been killed. Chapter 24. Joash became king of Judah at the age of 7, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 40 years. His mother was Zebiah from the city of Beersheba. He did what was pleasing to the Lord as long as Jehoiada the priest was alive. Jehoiada chose 2 wives for King Joash, and they bore him sons and daughters. After he had been king for a while, Joash decided to have the temple repaired. He ordered the priests and the Levites to go to the cities of Judah and collect from all the people enough money to make the annual repairs on the temple. He told them to act promptly, but the Levites delayed. So he called in Jehoiada, their leader, and demanded, "Why haven't you seen to it that the Levites collect from Judah and Jerusalem the tax which Moses, the servant of the Lord, required the people to pay for support of the tent of the Lord's presence?" The followers of Athaliah, that corrupt woman, had damaged the temple and had used many of the sacred objects in the worship of Baal. The king ordered the Levites to make a box for contributions and to place it at the temple gate. They sent word throughout Jerusalem and Judah for everyone to bring to the Lord the tax which Moses, God's servant, had first collected in the wilderness. This pleased the people and their leaders, and they brought their tax money and filled the box with it. Every day the Levites would take the box to the royal official who was in charge of it. Whenever it was full, the royal secretary and the high priest's representative would take the money out and return the box to its place. And so they collected a large sum of money. The king and Jehoiada would give the money to those who were in charge of repairing the temple, and they hired stonemasons, carpenters, and metal workers to make the repairs. All of them worked hard, and they restored the temple to its original condition, as solid as ever. When the repairs were finished, the remaining gold and silver was given to the king and Jehoiada, who used it to have bowls and other utensils made for the temple. As long as Jehoiada was alive, sacrifices were offered regularly at the temple. After reaching the very old age of 130, he died. They buried him in the royal tombs in David's city in recognition of the service he had done for the people of Israel, for God, and for the temple. But once Jehoiada was dead, the leaders of Judah persuaded King Joash to listen to them instead. And so the people stopped worshiping in the temple of the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and began to worship idols and the images of the goddess Asherah. Their guilt for these sins brought the Lord's anger on Judah and Jerusalem. The Lord sent prophets to warn them to return to him, but the people refused to listen. Then the Spirit of God took control of Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, the priest. He stood where the people could see him and called out, The Lord God asks why you have disobeyed his commands and are bringing disaster on yourselves. You abandoned him, so he has abandoned you. King Joash joined in a conspiracy against Zechariah, and on the king's orders the people stoned Zechariah in the temple courtyard. The king forgot about the loyal service that Zechariah's father, Jehoiada, had given him, and he had Zechariah killed. As Zechariah was dying, he called out, "May the Lord see what you are doing and punish you." When autumn came that year, the Syrian army attacked Judah and Jerusalem, killed all the leaders, and took large amounts of loot back to Damascus. The Syrian army was small, but the Lord let them defeat a much larger Judean army because the people had abandoned him, the Lord God of their ancestors. In this way, King Joash was punished. He was severely wounded, and when the enemy withdrew, 2 of his officials plotted against him and killed him in his bed to avenge the murder of the son of Jehoiada the priest. He was buried in David's city, but not in the royal tombs. Those who plotted against him were Zabad, the son of an Ammonite woman named Shemeath, and Jehozabad, the son of a Moabite woman named Shemrith. The commentary on the Book of Kings contains the stories of the sons of Joash, the prophecies spoken against him, and the record of how he rebuilt the temple. His son Amaziah succeeded him as king. Chapter 25. Amaziah became king at the age of 25, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 29 years. His mother was Jehoaddan from Jerusalem. He did what was pleasing to the Lord, but did it reluctantly. As soon as he was firmly in power, he executed the officials who had murdered his father. He did not, however, execute their children, but followed what the Lord had commanded in the law of Moses. Parents are not to be put to death for crimes committed by their children, and children are not to be put to death for crimes committed by their parents. People are to be put to death only for crimes they themselves have committed. King Amaziah organized all the men of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin into army units, according to the clans they belonged to, and placed officers in command of units of 1,000 and units of 100. This included all men 20 years of age or older, 300,000 in all. They were picked troops, ready for battle, skilled in using spears and shields. In addition, he hired 100,000 soldiers from Israel at a cost of about 4 tons of silver. But a prophet went to the king and said to him, "Don't take these Israelite soldiers with you. The Lord is not with these people from the northern kingdom. You may think that they will make you stronger in battle, but it is God who has the power to give victory or defeat, and he will let your enemies defeat you." Amaziah asked the prophet, "But what about all that silver I have already paid for them?" The prophet replied, "The Lord can give you back more than that." So Amaziah sent the hired troops away and told them to go home. At this they went home, bitterly angry with the people of Judah. Amaziah summoned up his courage and led his army to Salt Valley. There they fought and killed 10,000 Edomite soldiers and captured another 10,000. They took the prisoners to the top of the cliff at the city of Selah and threw them off so that they were killed on the rocks below. Meanwhile, the Israelite soldiers that Amaziah had not allowed to go into battle with him attacked the Judean cities between Samaria and Beth-horon, killed 3,000 men, and captured quantities of loot. When Amaziah returned from defeating the Edomites, he brought their idols back with him, set them up, worshipped them, and burned incense to them. This made the Lord angry, so he sent a prophet to Amaziah. The prophet demanded, "Why have you worshipped foreign gods that could not even save their own people from your power?" "Since when," Amaziah interrupted, "have we made you advisor to the king? "Stop talking, or I'll have you killed." The prophet stopped, but not before saying, "Now I know that God has decided to destroy you because you have done all this and have ignored my advice." King Amaziah of Judah and his advisors plotted against Israel. He then sent a message to King Joash of Israel, who was the son of Jehoahaz and grandson of Jehu, challenging him to fight. Jehoash sent this answer to Amaziah. Once, a thorn bush in the Lebanon mountains sent a message to a cedar, "Give your daughter in marriage to my son." A wild animal passed by and trampled the bush down. "Now, Amaziah, you boast that you have defeated the Edomites, but I advise you to stay at home. Why stir up trouble that will only bring disaster on you and your people?" But Amaziah refused to listen. It was God's will for Amaziah to be defeated because he had worshipped the Edomite idols. So King Jehoash of Israel went into battle against King Amaziah of Judah. They met at Beth-shemesh in Judah. The Judean army was defeated, and the soldiers fled to their homes. Jehoash captured Amaziah and took him to Jerusalem. There he tore down the city wall from Ephraim Gate to the Corner Gate, a distance of 200 yards. He took back to Samaria as loot all the gold and silver in the temple equipment guarded by the descendants of Obed-Edom, and the palace treasures. He also took hostages with him. King Amaziah of Judah outlived King Jehoash of Israel by 15 years. All the other things that Amaziah did from the beginning to the end of his reign are recorded in the history of the kings of Judah and Israel. Ever since the time when he rebelled against the Lord, there had been a plot against him in Jerusalem. Finally, he fled to the city of Lachish, but his enemies followed him there and killed him. His body was carried to Jerusalem on a horse, and he was buried in the royal tombs in David's city. Chapter 26. All the people of Judah chose Amaziah's 16-year-old son, Uzziah, to succeed his father as king. It was after the death of Amaziah that Uzziah recaptured Elath and rebuilt the city. Uzziah became king at the age of 16, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 52 years. His mother was Jechaliah from Jerusalem. Following the example of his father, he did what was pleasing to the Lord. As long as Zechariah, his religious advisor, was living, he served the Lord faithfully, and God blessed him. Uzziah went to war against the Philistines. He tore down the walls of the cities of Gath, Jamnia, and Ashdod, and built fortified cities near Ashdod and in the rest of Philistia. God helped him defeat the Philistines, the Arabs living at Gurbaal, and the Meunites. The Ammonites paid tribute to Uzziah, and he became so powerful that his fame spread even to Egypt. Uzziah strengthened the fortifications of Jerusalem by building towers at the corner gate, at the valley gate, and where the wall turned. He also built fortified towers in the open country and dug many cisterns, because he had large herds of livestock in the western foothills and plains. Because he loved farming, he encouraged the people to plant vineyards in the hill country and to farm the fertile land. He had a large army ready for battle. Its records were kept by his secretaries, Jeiel and Maaseiah, under the supervision of Hananiah, a member of the king's staff. The army was commanded by 2,600 officers. Under them were 307,500 soldiers, able to fight effectively for the king against his enemies. Uzziah supplied the army with shields, spears, helmets, coats of armor, bows and arrows, and stones for slinging. In Jerusalem, his inventors made equipment for shooting arrows and for throwing large stones from the towers and corners of the city wall. His fame spread everywhere, and he became very powerful because of the help he received from God. But when King Uzziah became strong, he grew arrogant, and that led to his downfall. He defied the Lord his God by going into the temple to burn incense on the altar of incense. Azariah the priest, accompanied by 80 strong and courageous priests, followed the king to resist him. They said, "Uzziah, you have no right to burn incense to the Lord. Only the priests who are descended from Aaron have been consecrated to do this. Leave this holy place. You have offended the Lord God, and you no longer have his blessing." Uzziah was standing there in the temple beside the incense altar and was holding an incense burner. He became angry with the priests, and immediately a dreaded skin disease broke out on his forehead. Azariah and the other priests stared at the king's forehead in horror and then forced him to leave the temple. He hurried to get out because the Lord had punished him. For the rest of his life, King Uzziah was ritually unclean because of his disease. Unable to enter the temple again, he lived in his own house, relieved of all duties, while his son Jotham governed the country. The prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz, recorded all the other things that King Uzziah did during his reign. Uzziah died and was buried in the royal burial ground, but because of his disease, he was not buried in the royal tombs. His son Jotham succeeded him as king. Chapter 27. Jotham became king at the age of 25, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 16 years. His mother was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. He did what was pleasing to the Lord, just as his father had done. But unlike his father, he did not sin by burning incense in the temple. The people, however, went on sinning. It was Jotham who built the north gate of the temple and did extensive work on the city wall in the area of Jerusalem called Ophel. In the mountains of Judah he built cities, and in the forests he built forts and towers. He fought against the king of Ammon and his army and defeated them. Then he forced the Ammonites to pay him the following tribute each year for 3 years: 4 tons of silver, 50,000 bushels of wheat, and 50,000 bushels of barley. Jotham grew powerful because he faithfully obeyed the Lord his God. The other events of Jotham's reign, his wars, and his policies are all recorded in the history of the kings of Israel and Judah. Jotham was 25 years old when he became king, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 16 years. He died and was buried in David's city, and his son Ahaz succeeded him as king. Chapter 28. Ahaz became king at the age of 20, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 16 years. He did not follow the good example of his ancestor King David. Instead, he did what was not pleasing to the Lord, and followed the example of the kings of Israel. He had metal images of Baal made, burned incense in Hinnom Valley, and even sacrificed his own sons as burnt offerings to idols, imitating the disgusting practice of the people whom the Lord had driven out of the land as the Israelites advanced. At the pagan places of worship on the hills and under every shady tree, Ahaz offered sacrifices and burned incense. Because King Ahaz sinned, the Lord his God let the king of Syria defeat him and take a large number of Judeans back to Damascus as prisoners. The Lord also led the king of Israel, Pekah, son of Remaliah, defeat Ahaz and kill 120,000 of the bravest Judean soldiers in one day. The Lord, the God of their ancestors, permitted this to happen because the people of Judah had abandoned him. An Israelite soldier named Zikri killed King Ahaz's son, Maaseiah, the palace administrator, Azrikam, and Elkanah, who was second in command to the king. Even though the Judeans were their own relatives, the Israelite army captured 200,000 women and children as prisoners and took them back to Samaria, along with large amounts of loot. A man named Oded, a prophet of the Lord, lived in the city of Samaria. He met the returning Israelite army with its Judean prisoners as it was about to enter the city, and he said, "The Lord God of your ancestors was angry with Judah and let you defeat them. But now he has heard of the vicious way you slaughtered them. And now you intend to make the men and women of Jerusalem and Judah your slaves. Don't you know that you also have committed sins against the Lord your God? Listen to me. These prisoners are your brothers and sisters. Let them go, or the Lord will punish you in his anger." 4 of the leading men of the northern kingdom, Azariah the son of Jehohanan, Berechiah son of Meshillemoth, Jehizkiah son of Shallum, and Amasa son of Hadlai, also opposed the actions of the army. They said, "Don't bring those prisoners here. We have already sinned against the Lord and made him angry enough to punish us. Now you want to do something that will increase our guilt." So then the army handed the prisoners and the loot over to the people and their leaders, and the 4 men were appointed to provide the prisoners with clothing from the captured loot. They gave them clothes and sandals to wear, gave them enough to eat and drink, and put olive oil on their wounds. Those who were too weak to walk were put on donkeys, and all the prisoners were taken back to Judean territory at Jericho, the city of palm trees. Then the Israelites returned home to Samaria. The Edomites began to raid Judah again and captured many prisoners. So King Ahaz asked Tiglath-Pileser, the emperor of Assyria, to send help. At this same time, the Philistines were raiding the towns in the western foothills and in southern Judah. They captured the cities of Beth-Shemesh, Aijalon, and Gederoth, and the cities of Soko, Timnah, and Gimzo, with their villages, and settled there permanently. Because King Ahaz of Judah had violated the rights of his people and had defied the Lord brought troubles on Judah. The Assyrian emperor, instead of helping Ahaz, opposed him and caused him trouble. So Ahaz took the gold from the temple, the palace, and the homes of the leaders of the people and gave it to the emperor, but even this did not help. When his troubles were at their worst, that man Ahaz sinned against the Lord more than ever. He offered sacrifices to the gods of the Syrians who had defeated him. He said, "The Syrian gods help the kings of Syria, so if I sacrifice to them, they may help me too." This brought disaster on him and on his nation. In addition, he took all the temple equipment and broke it in pieces. He closed the temple and set up altars in every part of Jerusalem. In every city and town in Judah, he built pagan places of worship, where incense was to be burned to foreign gods. In this way, he brought on himself the anger of the Lord, the God of his ancestors. All the other events of his reign, from beginning to end, are recorded in the history of the kings of Judah and Israel. King Ahaz died and was buried in Jerusalem, but not in the royal tombs. His son, Hezekiah, succeeded him as king. Chapter 29. Hezekiah became king of Judah at the age of 25, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 29 years. His mother was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. Following the example of his ancestor King David, he did what was pleasing to the Lord. In the first month of the year after Hezekiah became king, he reopened the gates of the temple and had them repaired. He assembled a group of priests and Levites in the east courtyard of the temple and spoke to them there. He said, "You Levites are to consecrate yourselves and purify the temple of the Lord, the God of your ancestors. Remove from the temple everything that defiles it. Our ancestors were unfaithful to the Lord our God and did what was displeasing to him. They abandoned him and turned their backs on the place where he dwells. They closed the doors of the temple, let the lamps go out, and failed to burn incense or offer burnt offerings in the temple of the God of Israel. Because of this, the Lord has been angry with Judah and Jerusalem, and what he has done to them has shocked and frightened everyone. You know this very well. Our fathers were killed in battle, and our wives and children have been taken away as prisoners. I have now decided to make a covenant with the Lord, the God of Israel, so that he will no longer be angry with us. My sons, do not lose any time. You are the ones that the Lord has chosen to burn incense to him and to lead the people in worshiping him. The following Levites were there. From the clan of Kohath, Mahath son of Amasai, and Joel son of Azariah. From the clan of Merari, Kish son of Abdi, and Azariah son of Jehalalel. From the clan of Gershon, Joah son of Zemah, and Eden son of Joah. From the clan of Elizaphan, Shimri and Jeuel. From the clan of Asaph, Zechariah and Mattaniah. From the clan of Heman, Jehuel and Shimei. From the clan of Jeduthun, Shemaiah and Uzziel. These men assembled their fellow Levites, and they all made themselves ritually clean. Then, as the king had commanded them to do, they began to make the temple ritually clean, according to the law of the Lord. The priests went inside the temple to purify it, and they carried out into the temple courtyard everything that was ritually unclean. From there, the Levites took it all outside the city to Kidron Valley. The work was begun on the first day of the first month, and by the 8th day they had finished it all, including the entrance room to the temple. Then they worked for the next 8 days until the 16th of the month, preparing the temple for worship. The Levites made the following report to King Hezekiah. We have completed the ritual purification of the whole temple, including the altar for burnt offerings, the table for the sacred bread, and all their equipment. We have also brought back all the equipment which King Ahaz took away during those years he was unfaithful to God, and we have rededicated it. It is all in front of the Lord's altar. Without delay, King Hezekiah assembled the leading men of the city, and together they went to the temple. As an offering to take away the sins of the royal family and of the people of Judah, and to purify the temple, they took 7 bulls, 7 sheep, 7 lambs, and 7 goats. The king told the priests, who were descendants of Aaron, to offer the animals as sacrifices on the altar. The priests killed the bulls first, then the sheep, and then the lambs, and sprinkled the blood of each sacrifice on the altar. Finally, they took the goats to the king and to the other worshippers, who laid their hands on them. Then the priests killed the goats and poured their blood on the altar as a sacrifice to take away the sin of all the people, for the king had commanded that burnt offerings and sin offerings be made for all Israel. The king followed the instructions that the Lord had given to King David through Gad, the king's prophet, and through the prophet Nathan. He stationed Levites in the temple with harps and cymbals, instruments like those that King David had used. The priests also stood there with trumpets. Hezekiah gave the order for the burnt offering to be presented, and as the offering began, the people sang praise to the Lord, and the musicians began to play the trumpets and all the other instruments. Everyone who was there joined in worship, and the singing and the rest of the music continued until all the sacrifices had been burned. Then King Hezekiah and all the people knelt down and worshiped God. The king and the leaders of the nation told the Levites to sing to the Lord the songs of praise that were written by David and by Asaph the prophet. So everyone sang with great joy as they knelt and worshiped God. Hezekiah said to the people, Now that you are ritually clean, bring sacrifices as offerings of thanksgiving to the Lord." They obeyed, and some of them also voluntarily brought animals to be sacrificed as burnt offerings. They brought 70 bulls, 100 sheep, and 200 lambs as burnt offerings for the Lord. They also brought 600 bulls and 3,000 sheep as sacrifices for the people to eat. Since there were not enough priests to kill all these animals, the Levites helped them until the work was finished. By then, more priests had made themselves ritually clean. The Levites were more faithful in keeping ritually clean than the priests were. In addition to offering the sacrifices that were burned whole, the priests were responsible for burning the fat that was offered from the sacrifices which the people ate, and for pouring out the wine that was presented with the burnt offerings. And so worship in the temple was begun again. King Hezekiah and the people were happy because God had helped them to do all this so quickly. Chapter 30. The people had not been able to celebrate the Passover festival at the proper time in the first month because not enough priests were ritually clean and not many people had assembled in Jerusalem. So King Hezekiah, his officials, and the people of Jerusalem agreed to celebrate it in the second month, and the king sent word to all the people of Israel and Judah. He took special care to send letters to the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, inviting them to come to the temple in Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover in honor of the Lord, the God of Israel. The king and the people were pleased with their plan, so they invited all the Israelites from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south to come together in Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover according to the law in larger numbers than ever before. Messengers went out at the command of the king and his officials through all Judah and Israel with the following invitation: "People of Israel, you have survived the Assyrian conquest of the land. Now return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he will return to you. Do not be like your ancestors and your Israelite relatives who were unfaithful to the Lord their God. As you can see, he punished them severely. Do not be stubborn as they were, but obey the Lord. Come to the temple in Jerusalem, which the Lord your God has made holy forever, and worship him so that he will no longer be angry with you. If you return to the Lord, then those who have taken your relatives away as prisoners will take pity on them and let them come back home. The Lord your God is kind and merciful, and if you return to him, he will accept you." The messengers went to every city in the territory of the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, and as far north as the tribe of Zebulun, but people laughed at them and made fun of them. Still, there were some from the tribes of Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun who were willing to come to Jerusalem. God was also at work in Judah and united the people in their determination to obey his will by following the commands of the king and his officials. A great number of people gathered in Jerusalem in the second month to celebrate the festival of unleavened bread. They took all the altars that had been used in Jerusalem for offering sacrifices and burning incense and threw them into Kidron Valley. And on the 14th day of the month they killed the lambs for the Passover sacrifice. The priests and Levites who were not ritually clean became so ashamed that they dedicated themselves to the Lord, and now they could sacrifice burnt offerings in the temple. They took their places in the temple according to the instructions in the law of Moses, the man of God. The Levites gave the blood of the sacrifices to the priests, who sprinkled it on the altar. Because many of the people were not ritually clean, they could not kill the Passover lambs. So the Levites did it for them and dedicated the lambs to the Lord. In addition, many of those who had come from the tribes of Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not performed the ritual of purification, and so they were observing Passover improperly. King Hezekiah offered this prayer for them: O Lord, the God of our ancestors, in your goodness, forgive those who are worshiping you with all their heart, even though they are not ritually clean. The Lord answered Hezekiah's prayer. He forgave the people and did not harm them. For 7 days the people who had gathered in Jerusalem celebrated the festival of unleavened bread with great joy, and day after day the Levites and the priests praised the Lord with all their strength. Hezekiah praised the Levites for their skill in conducting the worship of the Lord. After the 7 days during which they offered sacrifices in praise of the Lord, the God of their ancestors, they all decided to celebrate for another 7 days, so they celebrated with joy. King Hezekiah contributed 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep for the people to kill and eat, and the officials gave them another 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep. A large number of priests went through the ritual of purification, so everyone was happy: the people of Judah, the priests, the Levites, the people who had come from the north, and the foreigners who had settled permanently in Israel and Judah. The city of Jerusalem was filled with joy because nothing like this had happened since the days of King Solomon, the son of David. The priests and the Levites asked the Lord's blessings on the people. In his home in heaven, God heard their prayers and accepted them. Chapter 31. After the festival ended, all the people of Israel went to every city in Judah and broke the stone pillars, cut down the symbols of the goddess Asherah, and destroyed the altars and the pagan places of worship. They did the same thing throughout the rest of Judah and the territories of Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh. Then they all returned home. King Hezekiah reestablished the organization of the priests and Levites, under which they each had specific duties. These included offering the burnt offerings and the fellowship offerings, taking part in the temple worship, and giving praise and thanks in the various parts of the temple. From his own flocks and herds he provided animals for the burnt offerings each morning and evening, and for those offered on the Sabbath, at the new moon festival, and at the other festivals which are required by the law of the Lord. In addition, the king told the people of Jerusalem to bring the offerings to which the priests and the Levites were entitled, so that they could give all their time to the requirements of the law of the Lord. As soon as the order was given, the people of Israel brought gifts of their finest grain, wine, olive oil, honey, and other farm produce, and they also brought the tithes of everything they had. All the people who lived in the cities of Judah brought tithes of their cattle and sheep, and they also brought large quantities of gifts, which they dedicated to the Lord their God. The gifts started arriving in the 3rd month and continued to pile up for the next 4 months. When King Hezekiah and his officials saw how much had been given, they praised the Lord and praised his people Israel. The king spoke to the priests and the Levites about these gifts. And Azariah the high priest, a descendant of Zadok, said to him, "Since the people started bringing their gifts to the temple, there has been enough to eat, and a large surplus besides. We have all this because the Lord has blessed his people." On the king's orders, they prepared storerooms in the temple area and put all the gifts and tithes in them for safekeeping. They placed a Levite named Conaniah in charge and made his brother Shimei his assistant. 10 Levites were assigned to work under them: Jehiel, Azaziah, Nahath, Asahel, Jeremoth, Jozabad, Eliel, Ismachiah, Mahath, and Benaiah. All this was done under the authority of King Hezekiah and Azariah the high priest. Koreh, son of Imnah, a Levite who was chief guard at the east gate of the temple, was in charge of receiving the gifts offered to the Lord and of distributing them. In the other cities where priests lived, he was faithfully assisted in this by other Levites: Eden, Meniamin, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah. They distributed the food equally to their fellow Levites according to what their duties were, and not by clans. They gave a share to all males 30 years of age or older who had daily responsibilities in the temple in accordance with their positions. The priests were assigned their duties by clans, and the Levites 20 years of age or older were assigned theirs by work groups. They were all registered together with their wives, children, and other dependents, because they were required to be ready to perform their sacred duties at any time. Among the priests who lived in the cities assigned to Aaron's descendants, or in the pasture lands belonging to these cities, there were responsible men who distributed the food to all the males in the priestly families and to everyone who was on the rolls of the Levite clans. Throughout all Judah, King Hezekiah did what was right and what was pleasing to the Lord his God. He was successful because everything he did for the temple or in observance of the law, he did in a spirit of complete loyalty and devotion to his God. Chapter 32. After these events in which King Hezekiah served the Lord faithfully, Sennacherib, the emperor of Assyria, invaded Judah. He besieged the fortified cities and gave orders for his army to break their way through the walls. When Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib intended to attack Jerusalem also, he and his officials decided to cut off the supply of water outside the city in order to keep the Assyrians from having any water when they got near Jerusalem. The officials led a large number of people out and stopped up all the springs so that no more water flowed out of them. The king strengthened the city's defenses by repairing the wall, building towers on it, and building an outer wall. In addition, he repaired the defenses built on the land that was filled in on the east side of the old part of Jerusalem. He also had a large number of spears and shields made. He placed all the men in the city under the command of army officers and had them assemble in the open square at the city gate. He said to them, "Be determined and confident, and don't be afraid of the Assyrian emperor or of the army he is leading. We have more power on our side than he has on his. He has human power, but we have the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles." The people were encouraged by these words of their king. Sometime later, while Sennacherib and his army were still at Lachish, he sent the following message to Hezekiah and the people of Judah who were with him in Jerusalem. "I, Sennacherib, emperor of Assyria, ask, what gives you people the confidence to remain in Jerusalem under siege? Hezekiah tells you that the Lord your God will save you from our power, but Hezekiah is deceiving you and will let you die of hunger and thirst. He is the one who destroyed the Lord's shrines and altars and then told the people of Judah and Jerusalem to worship and burn incense at one altar only. Don't you know what my ancestors and I have done to the people of other nations? Did the gods of any other nation save their people from the emperor of Assyria? When did any of the gods of all those countries ever save their country from us? Then what makes you think that your God can save you? Now don't let Hezekiah deceive you or mislead you like that. Don't believe him. No god of any nation has ever been able to save his people from any Assyrian emperor. So certainly this God of yours can't save you." The Assyrian officials said even worse things about the Lord God and Hezekiah, the Lord's servant. The letter that the emperor wrote defied the Lord, the God of Israel. It said, "The gods of the nations have not saved their people from my power, and neither will Hezekiah's God save his people from me." The officials shouted this in Hebrew in order to frighten and discourage the people of Jerusalem who were on the city wall, so that it would be easier to capture the city. They talked about the God of Jerusalem in the same way that they talked about the gods of the other peoples, idols made by human hands. Then King Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz, prayed to God and cried out to him for help. The Lord sent an angel that killed the soldiers and officers of the Assyrian army. So the emperor went back to Assyria disgraced. One day, when he was in the temple of his God, some of his sons killed him with their swords. In this way, the Lord rescued King Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem from the power of Sennacherib, the emperor of Assyria, and also from their other enemies. He let the people live in peace with all the neighboring countries. Many people came to Jerusalem bringing offerings to the Lord and gifts to Hezekiah, so that from then on all the nations held Hezekiah in honor. About this time, King Hezekiah became sick and almost died. He prayed, and the Lord gave him a sign that he would recover. But Hezekiah was too proud to show gratitude for what the Lord had done for him, and Judah and Jerusalem suffered for it. Finally, however, Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem humbled themselves, and so the Lord did not punish the people until after Hezekiah's death. King Hezekiah became very wealthy, and everyone held him in honor. He had storerooms built for his gold, silver, precious stones, spices, shields, and other valuable objects. In addition, he had storehouses built for his grain, wine, and olive oil, barns for his cattle, and pens for his sheep. Besides all this, God gave him sheep and cattle and so much other wealth that he built many cities. It was King Hezekiah who blocked the outlet for the Gihon spring and channeled the water to flow through a tunnel to a point inside the walls of Jerusalem. Hezekiah succeeded in everything he did, and even when the Babylonian ambassadors came to inquire about the unusual event that had happened in the land, God let Hezekiah go his own way only in order to test his character. Everything else that King Hezekiah did in his devotion to the Lord are recorded in the vision of the prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz, and in the history of the kings of Judah and Israel. Hezekiah died and was buried in the upper section of the royal tombs. All the people of Judah and Jerusalem paid him great honor at his death. His son Manasseh succeeded him as king. Chapter 33. Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king of Judah, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 55 years. Following the disgusting practices of the nations whom the Lord had driven out of the land as his people advanced, Manasseh sinned against the Lord. He rebuilt the pagan places of worship that his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He built altars for the worship of Baal, made images of the goddess Asherah, and worshipped the stars. He built pagan altars in the temple, the place that the Lord had said was where he should be worshipped forever. In the 2 courtyards of the temple, he built altars for the worship of the stars. He sacrificed his sons in Hinnom Valley as burnt offerings. He practiced divination and magic and consulted fortune tellers and mediums. He sinned greatly against the Lord and stirred up his anger. He placed an image in the temple, the place about which God had said to David and his son Solomon, "Here in Jerusalem, in this temple, is the place that I have chosen out of all the territory of the 12 tribes of Israel as the place where I am to be worshipped. And if the people of Israel will obey all my commands and keep the whole law that my servant Moses gave them, then I will not allow them to be driven out of the land that I gave to their ancestors." Manasseh led the people of Judah to commit even greater sins than those committed by the nations whom the Lord had driven out of the land as his people advanced. Although the Lord warned Manasseh and his people, they refused to listen. So the Lord let the commanders of the Assyrian army invade Judah. They captured Manasseh, stuck hooks in him, put him in chains, and took him to Babylon. In his suffering he became humble, turned to the Lord his God, and begged him for help. God accepted Manasseh's prayer and answered it by letting him go back to Jerusalem and rule again. This convinced Manasseh that the Lord was God. After this, Manasseh increased the height of the outer wall on the east side of David's city from a point in the valley near Gibbon Spring north to the Fish Gate and the area of the city called Ophel. He also stationed an army officer in command of a unit of troops in each of the fortified cities of Judah. He removed from the temple the foreign gods and the image that he had placed there, and the pagan altars that were on the hill where the temple stood and in other places in Jerusalem. He took all these things outside the city and threw them away. He also repaired the altar where the Lord was worshipped, and he sacrificed fellowship offerings and thanksgiving offerings on it. He commanded all the people of Judah to worship the Lord, the God of Israel. Although the people continued to offer sacrifices at other places of worship, they offered them only to the Lord. Everything else that Manasseh did, the prayer he made to his God, and the messages of the prophets who spoke to him in the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, are all recorded in the history of the kings of Israel. The king's prayer and God's answer to it, and an account of the sins he committed before he repented, the evil he did, the pagan places of worship, and the symbols of the goddess Asherah that he made and the idols that he worshipped, are all recorded in the history of the prophets. Manasseh died and was buried at the palace, and his son Amon succeeded him as king. Amon was 22 years old when he became king of Judah, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 2 years. Like his father Manasseh, he sinned against the Lord, and he worshipped the idols that his father had worshipped. But unlike his father, he did not become humble and turn to the Lord. He was even more sinful than his father had been. Amon's officials plotted against him and assassinated him in the palace. The people of Judah killed Amon's assassins and made his son Josiah king. Chapter 34. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king of Judah, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 31 years. He did what was pleasing to the Lord. He followed the example of his ancestor King David, strictly obeying all the laws of God. In the 8th year that Josiah was king, while he was still very young, he began to worship the God of his ancestor King David. 4 years later, he began to destroy the pagan places of worship, the symbols of the goddess Asherah, and all the other idols. Under his direction, the altars where Baal was worshipped were smashed, and the incense altars near them were torn down. They ground to dust the images of Asherah and all the other idols, and then scattered the dust on the graves of the people who had sacrificed to them. He burned the bones of the pagan priests on the altars where they had worshipped. By doing all this, he made Judah and Jerusalem ritually clean again. He did the same thing in the cities and the devastated areas of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simeon, as far north as Naphtali. Throughout the territories of the northern kingdom, he smashed the altars and the symbols of Asherah, ground the idols to dust, and broke into bits all the incense altars. Then he returned to Jerusalem. In the 18th year of his reign, after he had purified the land and the temple by ending pagan worship, King Josiah sent 3 men to repair the temple of the Lord God: Shaphan, son of Azaliah, Maaseiah, the governor of Jerusalem, and Joah, son of Joahaz, a high official. The money that the Levite guards had collected in the temple was turned over to Hilkiah, the high priest. It had been collected from the people of Ephraim and Manasseh and the rest of the northern kingdom, and from the people of Judah, Benjamin, and Jerusalem. This money was then handed over to the 3 men in charge of the temple repairs, and they gave it to the carpenters, the builders, to buy the stones and the timber used to repair the buildings that the kings of Judah had allowed to decay. The men who did the work were thoroughly honest. They were supervised by 4 Levites, Jahath and Obadiah of the clan of Merari, and Zechariah and Meshullam of the clan of Kohath. The Levites were all skillful musicians. Other Levites were in charge of transporting materials and supervising the workers on various jobs, and others kept records or served as guards. While the money was being taken out of the storeroom, Hilkiah found the book of the law of the Lord, the law that God had given to Moses. He said to Shaphan, "I have found the book of the law here in the temple." He gave Shaphan the book, and Shaphan took it to the king. He reported, "We have done everything that you commanded. We have taken the money that was kept in the temple and handed it over to the workers and their supervisors." Then he added, "I have here a book that Hilkiah gave me." And he read it aloud to the king. When the king heard the book being read, he tore his clothes in dismay and gave the following orders to Hilkiah, to Ahikam, son of Shaphan, to Abdon, son of Micaiah, to Shaphan, the court secretary, and to Asaiah, the king's attendant. "Go and consult the Lord for me and for the people who still remain in Israel and Judah. Find out about the teachings of this book. The Lord is angry with us because our ancestors have not obeyed the word of the Lord and have not done what this book says must be done." At the king's command, Hilkiah and the others went to consult a woman named Huldah, a prophet who lived in the newer part of Jerusalem. Her husband, Shallum, the son of Tikvah and grandson of Harhas, was in charge of the temple robes. They described to her what had happened, and she told them to go back to the king and give him the following message from the Lord. "I am going to punish Jerusalem and all its people with the curses written in the book that was read to the king. They have rejected me and have offered sacrifices to other gods, and so have stirred up my anger by all they have done. My anger is aroused against Jerusalem, and it will not die down. As for the king himself, this is what I, the Lord God of Israel, say. You listened to what is written in the book, and you repented and humbled yourself before me, tearing your clothes and weeping, when you heard how I threatened to punish Jerusalem and its people. I have heard your prayer, and the punishment which I am going to bring on Jerusalem will not come until after your death. I will let you die in peace." The men returned to King Josiah with this message. King Josiah summoned all the leaders of Judah and Jerusalem, and together they went to the temple, accompanied by the priests and the Levites and all the rest of the people, rich and poor alike. Before them all the king read aloud the whole book of the covenant which had been found in the temple. He stood by the royal column and made a covenant with the Lord to obey him, to keep his laws and commands with all his heart and soul, and to put into practice the demands attached to the covenant as written in the book. He made the people of Benjamin and everyone else present in Jerusalem promise to keep the covenant. And so the people of Jerusalem obeyed the requirements of the covenant they had made with the God of their ancestors. King Josiah destroyed all the disgusting idols that were in the territory belonging to the people of Israel, and as long as he lived, he required the people to serve the Lord, the God of their ancestors. Chapter 35. King Josiah celebrated the Passover at Jerusalem in honor of the Lord. On the 14th day of the first month, they killed the animals for the festival. He assigned to the priests the duties they were to perform in the temple and encouraged them to do well. He also gave these instructions to the Levites, the teachers of Israel, who were dedicated to the Lord. Put the sacred covenant box in the temple that King Solomon the son of David built. You are no longer to carry it from place to place, but you are to serve the Lord your God and his people Israel. Take your places in the temple by clans according to the responsibilities assigned to you by King David and his son King Solomon, and arrange yourselves so that some of you will be available to help each family of the people of Israel. You are to kill the Passover lambs and goats. Now make yourselves ritually clean and prepare the sacrifices in order that your fellow Israelites may follow the instructions which the Lord gave through Moses. For the use of the people at the Passover, King Josiah contributed from his own herds and flocks 30,000 sheep, lambs, and young goats, and 3,000 bulls. His officials also made contributions for the people, the priests, and the Levites to use. And the officials in charge of the temple, Hilkiah the high priest, Zechariah, and Jehiel, gave the priests 2,600 lambs and young goats and 300 bulls for sacrifices during the festival. The leaders of the Levites, Conaniah, Shemaiah, and his brother Nethanel, Hashabiah, Jeiel, and Jozabad, contributed 5,000 lambs and young goats and 500 bulls for the Levites to offer as sacrifices. When everything was arranged for the Passover, the priests and the Levites took their posts as commanded by the king. After the lambs and goats had been killed, the Levites skinned them, and the priests sprinkled the blood on the altar. Then they divided among the people by family groups the animals for burnt offerings, so that they could offer them according to the instructions in the law of Moses. The Levites roasted the Passover sacrifices over the fire according to the regulations and boiled the sacred offerings in pots, kettles, and pans, and quickly distributed the meat to the people. After this was done, the Levites provided meat for themselves and for the priests descended from Aaron, for the priests were kept busy until night, burning the animals that were burned whole and the fat of the sacrifices. The following musicians of the Levite clan of Asaph were in the places assigned to them by King David's instructions: Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun, the king's prophet. The guards at the temple gates did not need to leave their posts because the other Levites prepared the Passover for them. So as King Josiah had commanded, everything was done that day for the worship of the Lord, the keeping of the Passover festival, and the offering of burnt offering on the altar. For 7 days all the people of Israel who were present celebrated the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread. Since the days of the prophet Samuel, the Passover had never been celebrated like this. None of the former kings had ever celebrated a Passover like this one celebrated by King Josiah. The priests, the Levites, and the people of Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem in the 18th year of Josiah's reign. After King Josiah had done all this for the temple, King Necho of Egypt led an army to fight at Carchemish on the Euphrates River. Josiah tried to stop him, but Necho sent Josiah this message: "This war I am fighting does not concern you, King of Judah. I have not come to fight you, but to fight my enemies, and God has told me to hurry. God is on my side, so don't oppose me, or he will destroy you." But Josiah was determined to fight. He refused to listen to what God was saying through King Necho. So he disguised himself and went into battle on the plain of Megiddo. During the battle, King Josiah was struck by Egyptian arrows. He ordered his servants, "Take me away, I'm badly hurt." They lifted him out of his chariot, placed him in a second chariot which he had there, and took him to Jerusalem. There he died and was buried in the royal tombs. All the people of Judah and Jerusalem mourned his death. The prophet Jeremiah composed a lament for King Josiah. It has become a custom in Israel for the singers, both men and women, to use this song when they mourn for him. The song is found in the collection of laments. Everything that Josiah did, his devotion to the Lord, his obedience to the law, and his history from beginning to end, is all recorded in the history of the kings of Israel and Judah. Chapter 36. The people of Judah chose Josiah's son, Joahaz, and anointed him king in Jerusalem. Joahaz was 23 years old when he became king of Judah, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 3 months. King Necho of Egypt took him prisoner and made Judah pay 7,500 pounds of silver and 75 pounds of gold as tribute. Necho made Joahaz's brother Eliakim king of Judah and changed his name to Jehoiakim. Joahaz was taken to Egypt by Necho. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king of Judah, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 11 years. He sinned against the Lord his God. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylonia invaded Judah, captured Jehoiakim, and took him to Babylonia in chains. Nebuchadnezzar carried off some of the treasures of the temple and put them in his palace in Babylon. Everything that Jehoiakim did, including his disgusting practices and the evil he committed, is recorded in the history of the kings of Israel and Judah. His son, Jehoiakim, succeeded him as king. Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he became king of Judah, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 3 months and 10 days. He too sinned against the Lord. When spring came, King Nebuchadnezzar took Jehoiakim to Babylonia as a prisoner and carried off the treasures of the temple. Then Nebuchadnezzar made Jehoiakim's uncle Zedekiah king of Judah and Jerusalem. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king of Judah, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 11 years. He sinned against the Lord and did not listen humbly to the prophet Jeremiah, who spoke the word of the Lord. Zedekiah rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had forced him to swear in God's name that he would be loyal. He stubbornly refused to repent and return to the Lord, the God of Israel. In addition, the leaders of Judah, the priests, and the people followed the sinful example of the nations around them in worshiping idols, and so they defiled the temple which the Lord himself had made holy. The Lord, the God of their ancestors, had continued to send prophets to warn his people because he wanted to spare them and the temple. But they made fun of God's messengers, ignoring his words and laughing at his prophets, until at last the Lord's anger against his people was so great that there was no escape. So the Lord brought the king of Babylonia to attack them. The king killed the young men of Judah, even in the temple. He had no mercy on anyone, young or old, man or woman, sick or healthy. God handed them all over to him. The king of Babylonia looted the temple treasury, and the wealth of the king and his officials, and took everything back to Babylon. He burned down the temple and the city with all its palaces and its wealth, and broke down the city wall. He took all the survivors to Babylonia, where they served him and his descendants as slaves until the rise of the Persian Empire. And so what the Lord had foretold through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. The land will lie desolate for 70 years to make up for the Sabbath rest that has not been observed. In the first year that Cyrus of Persia was emperor, the Lord made what he had said through the prophet Jeremiah come true. He prompted Cyrus to issue the following command and send it out in writing to be read aloud everywhere in his empire. This is the command of Cyrus, emperor of Persia. The Lord, the God of heaven, has made me ruler over the whole world and has given me the responsibility of building a temple for him in Jerusalem in Judah. Now, all of you who are God's people, go there, and may the Lord your God be with you.
We'd like to thank you for joining the FP Network today, where we are loving God, loving people, and treasuring Jesus together.